the pursuit of truth has now got a massive blockade in its way. And the blockade is me, I, the self. So that you and I know this, and there are so many examples of it, some of which I give in the book, but don't go into that very difficult area. Why shouldn't I go into this very difficult area? Because it offends me. Yeah. Now, the obvious thing that the adults in the room do at that point is, so. Now we have become hostage to these people, anyone who says, don't go there, it offends me. And we step back. And like the other issues I mentioned earlier, there's a good reason for that. There's an advantage, which is, generally speaking, in our societies, we recognize that being nice to people is better than not being nice to people, that being polite and not offending people is a good idea. It's not been a view throughout human history, and it's not globally at the moment. But in societies like Australia, broadly speaking, okay, I'm sorry I offended you, I'll try to avoid that. But if this means that there are whole areas we don't look into, let me give an example quickly. The issue of child rearing, child production, parenthood. There are a whole set of very, very painful issues within that. Almost unending number of painful issues. And a lot of truths that need to be said and a lot of facts that need to be explored. Many things, though, we know about. We've been doing it for long enough as a species. However, if somebody says, if even one person says in a room, that offends me, we are likely to step back because we're treading on one of the most painful, important things in a person's life. So we're hostage to that. And it means that you can very easily, as a society, once you say we're not going to talk about or explore difficult and painful things, it's very easy as a society, as a result, to fall back and rely on lies or untruths. And you now see the consequences of this. I'm now 40. I see the consequences of it in my contemporaries who, for instance, were told at the outset of their careers, you can have everything.
Yeah.
That was an easy thing to tell people. It was a nice thing to tell people. It was a very encouraging thing to tell people. And it was also a little bit untrue.
This is really important stuff. I was talking to one of my neighbours at home in rural Australia, a highly intelligent man, very thoughtful man, very pragmatic man. And he said to me, John, you worry too much about this stuff. People have got a lot of common sense. But he's got 3 kids. They're being educated in systems now where this madness has taken over. My
interpretation of your society, correct me if I'm wrong, this is an audacious thing to explain from Australian, and afterwards you can explain Britain to me. But I was in Australia last summer before last, and I was very struck. I did a multiple city tour. I was very struck by the fact that I thought I have relied, and I'm sure this happens the other way around, I've relied in recent years on the assumption that your average Australian retains a common sense that is perhaps absent from the average American these days, not to mention perhaps the average Brit. That there was some core of common sense.
We haven't got quite as far down the road as the way we would normally put it.
And while that may be true for many people, I was very struck in city after city in Australia and in New Zealand that what I describe in the madness of crowds was at its absolute heart in your country.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to work out, because I wrote a little bit about Australia in my previous book, In the Strange Death of Europe, as well, as you know, about the immigration question, and specifically on the historical guilt issues. And it seems to me, among other things, that, and I would love you to correct me on this, but it seems to me, among other things, that Australia has had a massive shift in its sense of itself in your lifetime.
Yep.
And that as a result, it's become very vulnerable to this sort of...
It has. Yeah, I agree with that.
Right.
And another man who'd agree with both of us is Frank Ferruti. Now, he would not identify on the political spectrum where you and I might, but he too would say, Australians still display a lot of common sense, etc., etc. But I said to him, do you think our universities have avoided the worst of this? And he looked at me sharply and he said, no, I think you've fallen lazily into the worst of the British and American traits. But to come to the Australian psych, because there's something I want to draw out here. You think of perhaps our most renowned sportsman, certainly the one that I think I respect most personally, long gone of course now, Donald Bradman.
Right.
Unbelievable Australian cricketer. What was he known for? His character. And it was seen to epitomise what we thought mattered in character. He was extraordinarily gracious in victory and humble in defeat. Other way round. He was extraordinarily gracious in defeat and humble in victory. We admired him enormously. He was a legend for that. At what point in Western culture did pride, which is another word for self-centeredness, eclipse humility as a premier value, something to celebrate, if you like?
Well, it comes down to the same axle shift as everything else, which is, broadly speaking, did you think your society was a force for good, or was it evil from the start? Since 1945, every Western society has gone through this shift at some point, usually for similar reasons. And again, the basis of it has some good things. Accounting for historical errors, for instance. By the way, the oddity of this is that, for instance, all the countries that are made to feel worse at the moment are the places with the least reason to feel worse. I mean, we don't see massive self-interrogation in China.
No.
There's a reason. There's a reason. And there's a reason, by the way, which we should be proud of in our countries, which is perhaps the free countries, one of our freedoms is to beat up on ourselves.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure, but
we have the capacity to self-examine and work our way to a better position, which
Right.
is a large part of the thesis of your book.
But
we've done it well, but having almost arrived at the railway station, suddenly we've decided we've made no progress at all. We've gone backwards. We're
Yes.
absolutely terrible, and the trains just run off down the platform.
That's right. That a new generation comes along with believing, in many cases, I mean, having been lied to, that societies like Australia and Britain are the most racist societies on earth, or the most sexist societies on earth, or homophobic, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, compared to which societies precisely in the world. So the staggering lack of geographical and historical context in our countries. I mean, this is another failing of the university system. If the university system had merit, it would be inculcating in young people, among other things, a sense of damn gratitude, for starters, just for starters, some sense of perspective on the world. I mean, I've been very lucky in my career. I've traveled extremely widely across every continent in the world. And one of the things I know everywhere I go is how lucky I've been to be born in the society I've been born into at the time I was born here.
Privileged?
Even privileged. And
it's such a hard thing to measure, as you say in the book, but I interrupt.
But as I say, all of our societies at some point got shifted onto this idea that actually we weren't very good, we weren't very virtuous, that we'd done so much wrong. And this is where we become susceptible, enormously susceptible to anybody who claims to have a different way of doing things and who claims to have the answer, for instance, to everything.
Let me just tease this out a little. The loss of historical knowledge, of background, seems to me to be terrible. I don't think you can work out where you are, where you want to go, if you can't establish where you've come from.
Yes.
Basic map reading, if you like, it seems to me. Now, one of the great lessons I would have thought of history is that to deny people freedom of conscience, belief, religion, is to deny them the most fundamental freedoms of all. And again, Frank Ferruti made this point. He said the first freedom in a way in the West was freedom of conscience. We stopped burning one another at the stake because it was barbaric, it was not Christian, and it was also stupid. Today's minority may turn out to be tomorrow's majority. You talk about that a bit, that it appears that some people who have been pushing for rights, having achieved them, then turn the jackboot that they once were on the receiving end around and attack others. In fact, you make, there's something in here that really jumped out at me. You said almost immediately after gay marriage became legal in Germany, acceptance of it was made a condition of citizenship.
Yes.
In the state of Baden-Württemberg. A condition of citizenship. Can I ask for a start? Where does that leave the left? Those figures in a free country, they're right to believe this, who don't believe in marriage at all. They suddenly have to say, right, we do actually sign up and we now believe in marriage in its new version. But
only for gays.
But that's absurd. That is to deny everything that our own history's taught us. See, I would be one who say we ought to learn our history. So much of it has given us the freedoms that we have. But if you want to understand where we've gone wrong, we can learn from the things we've gone wrong as well. We're not prepared to even learn the things we got wrong, or from the things that we got wrong, let alone the things we got right.
Well, one of the reasons why the new metaphysics, new religion I describe in this book is identifiable is because the people who follow it behave with all the zealotry that religious fanatics have behaved with in the past. It's not enough that they believe something, you have to believe it too.
Thank you for watching this episode. We appreciate your support. If you value vital conversations like this one, be sure to subscribe to the channel there and also click the notification bell to stay up to date with new releases.